In a world where strength is everything, where noble bloodlines rule and the weak are cast aside, one man shatters every expectation. He was once the ruler of the Murim, the feared and undefeated heavenly demon, Baek Joong-Hyuk. Born from endless struggle, forged in blood, and feared across the martial world, he stood alone at the top. But when fate takes a strange turn, he awakens not in the world he once ruled, but in the body of Roman Dmitri, the disgrace of a noble house in a medieval world driven by politics, magic, and war. A man scorned, mocked, and discarded. No one expects anything from Roman. But they're about to learn what it means to cross a demon. This is not your typical ice guy. This is the tale of a war-hardened demon in a world unready for his wrath. Welcome to my explanation series of The Heavenly Demon Can't Live a Normal Life. If you're new to this manga, you're in for an epic journey of dominance, strategy, and unrelenting martial power. And if you're already a fan? Let's dive deeper into the story, the characters, and the moments that made this series unforgettable. So buckle up, because a normal life was never an option. The story starts in the Dmitri's castle where Hans, a servant of Baron Dmitri's family, could not hide his difficulties with the young master's abnormal behavior. So, you're saying that I am the eldest son of the Dmitri family? And this is the kingdom of Cairo on the Salamander continent. The world of Murim doesn't even exist. It was strange. The young master wasn't someone who was usually called smart, but he wasn't normally this stupid. Hans wondered if he was high on drugs. Recently, the deviance of the children of noble families has become a social issue, but it was a problem since it would be suspicious if it happened to young Master Roman Dmitri. Dmitri's fool. While the younger brothers had already moved to the capital and grew up steadily, he could see the reality of Roman Dmitri just by watching him rot in the outskirts by the time he reached the age of 25. Hans said calmly, "Young master, today is the day the esteemed daughter of the Lawrence family, who is promised to marry you, visits the estate of Dmitri. As you may have heard, the daughter of the Lawrence family is a person who values dignity and courtesy as a nobleman. So, it is better to prepare ahead of time. It's the first time you will see each other, so it would be great to make a good impression. There is something more important than that." Roman cut him off while he was talking. No matter how he looked at it, the young master, who seemed to not be in his right mind, spoke in a voice that had a different weight to it than usual. "Take me to the eldest man here. It is more important for me to meet him and get to know the world in which I will be living in the future, than to meet this esteemed daughter, whom I do not know." It was bizarre. The young master, who has lived in Dmitri's estate for 25 years, said it's important to know about the world for the future. "But what can I even do?" "I understand, young master." It was Hans' role to fulfill his duty as a servant. The place Hans guided Dmitri to was a village outside the Dmitri castle. After the war, many of their permanent residents lost their homes. However, the castle could not accommodate all of them, so they formed a village outside of it. At first, the village was made up of houses with quite plausible shapes, but the proportion of shacks gradually increased as they moved inside. "Are you the owner of this house? Young master, you came to such a shabby place like this?" The old man lying inside was startled. He hurriedly got over the bulky blanket and tried to get up, but he couldn't get up entirely because of an injury. "Sit down and listen." Roman sat down in front of him. The old man didn't know what to do as he sat down on the dirty ground, so he only looked at Roman's eyes. "I want to know everything about Dmitri's estate. What kind of land is this place and what kind of history does it have? It's probably going to be a long story, so why don't we talk slowly while enjoying the alcohol I brought?" Swish. Roman showed a bottle of wine hanging from his waist. Seeing the stunned old man with wide-open eyes, Roman made a smile that melted away his vigilance. Quickly. At the rock bottom of life, Roman chose to adapt to this world in his own way. At first, the old man could not speak properly. However, as he was getting tipsy and Roman showed a serious listening attitude, his vigilance was gone. Lord Dmitri was originally a famous blacksmith. He was running a profit-making business by selling iron pieces he made himself. However, he suddenly got the opportunity to supply weapons to the kingdom of Cairo. There was a war going on for a while, so it was a great opportunity to transcend the limits of one's status. After the war, the lord who received the rank of baron at the award ceremony. The talk was extremely long. Most of what he said was what the eldest son of the Dmitri family should know, but the unbridled old man narrated all the stories he knew at length. Roman's judgment was correct. He asked Hans what the old man liked, and he replied that he couldn't keep a secret while he was drunk, so he purposely prepared a drink to suit his taste. Thanks to him, he was able to get all the information he wanted. He, who was not yet accustomed to the person named Roman, gradually built up new information in his head. Roman Dmitri. No, his real name was Baek Joong-Hyuk. Baek Joong-Hyuk had lived most of his life as the head of the heavenly demon cult, which unified Murim. He was someone who had lived a fierce life as a martial artist. Having accomplished everything he wanted to, he calmly accepted his death. It was a great blessing to conquer all the heavenly beasts one and die, but when I opened my eyes, I was in Roman Dmitri's body. It was absurd. In fact, at the moment of his death, Baek Joong-Hyuk had entered the realm of ascension too. Although divine energy enveloped his soul, Baek Joong-Hyuk did not want a life where he could not live as a human being. So, he refused to climb. Most warriors ultimately want to achieve ascension, but Baek Joong-Hyuk wanted to die as a human. And now, at the crossroads of new choices, Baek Joong-Hyuk quickly accepted the reality he faced. Is this a gift from heaven, or is it God's punishment for refusing ascension? It didn't matter. A new life. A new environment. For Baek Joong-Hyuk, that was important. His last years as the heavenly demon were boring, but the scenery around him gave meaning to his life. People must live with a purpose. Having accomplished everything I wanted to, I could not live like a human being even though I could do everything. Rather, it's a good thing. Roman Dmitri, the kingdom of Cairo, this world full of unknowns will be a new challenge for me. His heart raced. Baek Joong-Hyuk lived a life that will remain in the history of Murim. However, looking back at it now, his life before that, when his life was at risk and fierce every day, made him live as a person rather than in his last peaceful years. He is someone who cannot live normally. That's the kind of person Baek Joong-Hyuk was. This is all I know. The talk was now over. Maybe because it had been a long time, the old man he had seen for the first time felt familiar now. Thank you, it was a big help to me. We will compensate for this separately later. No, young master. Just having a conversation with someone as precious as the young master was a great blessing for me. Baek Joong-Hyuk, no, Roman laughed. It was now time to go back. But, at that moment. Bang! Thump! You bastard! Loud noises were coming from outside. It seemed like something was going on near him. It was just as he expected. When he went out, he saw a group of men beating a boy who was not an adult yet. Bam! 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 You damn bastard! Just die! The boy did not make a single sound despite the intense beating. Perhaps that fueled the men's anger even more, and the men indiscriminately beat the boy intending to kill him. The boy's body shook with each punch. The skin exposed outside his clothes was already stained red with bruises, his face was also messed up, and his nose was dripping blood. People gathered around the noisy situation. However, when they saw the Fang tattoos on the men's bodies, they looked away in fear. What's going on? Young master. Roman stood next to Hans. Hans was watching the scene, and he said in a cautious voice when Roman appeared. They seem to be a part of the Blood Fang gang. It is a usury group that is active not only in the Dmitri estate but also in the neighboring estates, and seeing them do that, it seems that the boy owes a great debt to Blood Fang. You should just pretend you don't know. There is nothing good about being tangled up with them. Roman's gaze looked at the Blood Fang crew. Usury. Because of the high interest rates, people can't pay it back, leading to violence. The problem is that the punishment is not to be carried out by the citizens of this land. This was the land of Dmitri. As explained by the old man, they were obliged to judge and solve any problem by taking it to the Lord. Roman Dmitri. I still haven't quite figured out how to act as Roman. What is certain is that Roman is dead. When he woke up, the first things he found were a suicide note, believed to have been written by Roman, and drugs scattered on the floor. The contents of the will showed him how weak Roman was. The kingdom of Cairo is a kingdom that is always under the threat of war, so there is a law that requires each family to select a certain number of troops and one person to represent the family and forcibly perform their national defense duties for 2 years. Roman was included in it. Since it was impossible to force the 2 younger brothers with bright futures to death, Dmitri's lord decided to send Roman to the battlefield. So, Roman chose his death. Trembling at all the vicious rumors about the battlefield, he chose to end his life on the day he got severely drunk. From now on, I am Roman Dmitri. The previous life was omitted. No matter what kind of life Roman has led, he will believe and follow the values of Baek Joong-Hyuk from now on. Stop. Young master. Hans was startled at Roman's abrupt move forward and tried to stop Roman. However, it was already too late. Roman's voice was loud, and the Blood Fang gang, who had stopped beating the boy, looked at him with puzzled eyes. Roman Dmitri? It was a sight to behold. The problem was that Roman's reputation had reached them as well. The man with a vicious face, who seemed to be the gang leader, spoke out with a smirk. Don't mind this, young master Dmitri. We will take care of this. Trying to show off because he's a son of a noble. Stop it, he says. Kakik, retarded bastard. The gang whispered from behind and laughed. Hans said in a quiet voice as the others might hear as well. Young Master Roman, we have to return. The Blood Fang gang members are violent people. If a problem arises outside the castle, not even the Dmitri family can do anything about it. So, please calm down. Hans. Roman looked at Hans. The robust and low-pitched voice immediately caught the attention of Hans, who was trembling in fear. I don't know the laws of this place very well yet. So, please explain. Who has broken Dmitri's decrees here? And for breaking the law, what kind of punishment is appropriate? Hans was stunned. He felt like he was being sucked into Roman's eyes. Dmitri's fool. The unsightly man who lived in pleasure every day caught him with a powerful force that he could not escape now. In the current situation, it was suitable to run away. However, Hans unwittingly told the truth. The boy was guilty of not paying the debt on time. It certainly deserves punishment, but the Blood Fang gang has no right to punish it directly. Above all, they dared to speak insulting words against the eldest son of the Dmitri family in Dmitri's land. It is a felony that cannot be forgiven even with their lives. According to the law, it is not at all strange that they receive the death penalty. Hans bowed his head. His heart was pounding, and his legs were trembling, but now he felt like he had to reply truthfully to show respect to Roman. The onlookers held their breath, and a smirk appeared on the faces of the Blood Fang gang. Let's go with that. You have violated Dmitri's law. Roman stepped forward. While everyone was watching, he picked up a branch from the ground and pointed it like a sword at the Blood Fang gang. From now on, as the eldest son of the Dmitri family, I will execute the sentence for you all who have broken the law. The Blood Fang gang looked at each other with bewildered expressions. In particular, the man with a ferocious face, who seemed to be the captain, looked around to see if there were any unknown variables. Why the hell is the young master acting so unruly? There was nobody around. The general population had already retreated. Not even any enlisted soldiers of Dmitri were visible, and the surroundings had become utterly empty. There were only two people facing the Blood Fang gang. Only protagonist and his servant, Hans. Young master, I understand that you are a child of aristocrats who does not know much about the world, but it will be a problem to show such a disrespectful attitude towards others outside the castle and even more towards us, who have Fang tattoos. In this low life, protecting your pride is what puts food on the table. So, if we just step down, we will lose face as the members of the Blood Fang, even if the opponent is the son of the Dmitri family. Slide. All the gang members behind him pulled out their weapons. Showing their fierce eyes, they had the will to attack immediately when the commander's command was given. Protagonist laughed. This makes me sure. What do you mean? You guys are literally trash. If you treat this land's owner like this, I don't even have to find out how you treat the others. Trash? This son of a, huh? The captain couldn't even swear. The moment the captain's face turned red at his remarks, his pupils widened at the sudden change in the appearance of protagonist. Attack him. The Blood Fang gang members rushed in all at once. With the dagger he held in his hand, the captain also attacked protagonist's vital points without hesitation, but he dodged the attacks with a hair's breadth. His black hair blew beautifully in the wind. Protagonist's sharp eyes met the captain's. At that moment. Thud. The captain, whose neck had been pierced by a branch, tried to stop the leaking blood. The situation happened so quickly. The Blood Fang gang members attacked protagonist in desperation. At the attack of nearly 10 men, Hans stomped his feet fast, hurriedly grabbed a large stone around him, and tried to help protagonist. Surprisingly, he soon realized he didn't need to. Protagonist, who had dealt with the captain, was able to dodge all of his men's attacks with a movement that almost seemed inhuman and finally dealt with them one by one. It was curious enough to see him fight a dagger with a branch, and every time he attacked with the branch, a hole was punctured in the vital points of one of the men. He's a monster, a monster. Is this really Roman? The men were perplexed. At first, they risked their lives to fight, but they were terrified when they saw their comrades dying helplessly. However, the tides of the fight had already turned. The men fell one after the other. When the last remaining man was about to run away, protagonist's tough hand grabbed the man's hair. Let go, let it go. The man was furious. At the sight of his colleagues' unconscious bodies scattered around him, his face became pale and tired. Protagonist said, "You have violated Dmitri's law. However, you tried to cover up the situation by threatening me instead of reflecting on it. In order for an organization to carry on in the right manner, it is necessary to abide by the law. I will not take your life, but I will show people the fear of the law by setting you as an example of what they shouldn't become." A man who was called the Heavenly Demon. In Murim, protagonist was the law. As a lifelong leader, protagonist knew what choices he had to make for the law, even if he was cruel. He knelt the man down. Then he tilted his head back, and with his other hand, he pulled his tongue out. The sin of playing with the tongue in the wrong way. Pay the price accordingly. The man struggled desperately. However, there was no way he could escape. Protagonist's tough hand strongly suppressed the man's body, and protagonist grabbed the dagger that had fallen on the floor and cut off the man's tongue. His blood splattered. The man groaned, and his voice roaring in pain echoed around him. The villagers tightly closed their eyes at the brutal scene. However, protagonist had already cut off the man's tongue neatly without the slightest change in expression. Thud. The cut-off tongue fell to the ground. The man lowered his head. He wept with a bewildered look on his face, and his palms struggled to stop the gushing of blood from his mouth. My name is Roman Dmitri. If you don't like the punishment you've been given, you may come to me at any time. The Heavenly Demon Cult. In the world of the survival of the fittest, the price of breaking the law was always paid with blood. Protagonist looked at Hans. When Hans saw the young master's changed appearance for the first time, he was startled and stepped backward. Call the guards. Report today's events to them, and send troops here to do a follow-up. Ah, I see. It's disgusting. Hans hiccuped. He checked their corpses once and hurried to the castle with a pale expression on his face. An overwhelming victory. However, protagonist's expression was not good. You have such a garbage body. Roman Dmitri. No, Baek Joong-Hyuk. In Murim, he was the one who reached the top. Hundreds and thousands of warriors were slaughtered because they could not handle one Baek Joong-Hyuk, and when the blood flowed as large and wide as a river, the heavenly demon cult admitted that he was the ruler of Murim. As a man with the spirit of Baek Joong-Hyuk, he could not help but be dissatisfied. The flow of energy is messed up. The amount of chi he has in his body is so small. It was the worst. Still, there were traces of training in martial arts, but it was close to someone who had no training in Baek Joong-Hyuk's expectations. I have to start over with my body every now and then. Fortunately, I have past experiences of honing my martial arts skills as Baek Joong-Hyuk. If I set the right direction from the start and practice martial arts, I can get meaningful results even in the worst conditions. He had various thoughts in my mind. First of all, it was necessary to quickly gather information and proceed with the metamorphosis of the bones to create the basis of the body. It was then. Young master, thank you very much for your help. He was the boy who had been beaten earlier. He bowed his head and showed manners while limping his legs, perhaps because of his lack of mobility. A pitiful sight. Nevertheless, protagonist's voice was cold. I didn't help you out of pity. I executed the Blood Fang's punishment because they broke Dmitri's laws, and you can't escape that responsibility either. So, explain your situation without the slightest lie. If your words are judged to be false, even your tongue will not be safe. I understand, young master. The boy's expression calmed down. He was quite determined. It was impressive that he did not shed a single sound even when beaten, but it certainly looked unusual. As you know, Blood Fang is a group that lends money with high interest rates. My parents borrowed money from Blood Fang to rent the land. If the crops were harvested normally, the money could be fully repaid. However, due to the intentional interference of the Blood Fang, the crops were ruined. At first, I didn't know why they did this, but I later found out that they did it because they coveted my sister. Young master, I feel sad. Although we don't have a lot of money, we don't do any harm to others. There is no lie in my words. Please save us from the abyss of this evil. The boy bowed his head. The words were coherent, and there was not even a slight tremor in the boy's voice announcing the situation. Protagonist responded with interest. His face was black and skinny, without muscles, but the boy's eyes showed a sense of brilliance. I found the crazy demon, one of the 4 heavenly kings in such a shabby environment. At that time, he was just a little boy, but later, he grew up and became a stronger ally than anyone else. It's kind of like I'm seeing him again. What is your name? It's Kevin. Kevin. I will remember your name, and within a few days, I will make sure this case is handled through the right process. Gasp. Thank you. Thank you so much. The boy named Kevin expressed his gratitude several times. Protagonist grinned. A new life. A new relationship. Already, his heart was beating excitedly. After sorting out the situation, protagonist put on a robe with the help of Hans. Soon, it was time for Lawrence's daughter to arrive. She was a typical aristocratic young girl, and he couldn't meet her wearing clothes stained with blood and filthy muddy water. And in the process of changing clothes, he could hear the story of the 2 families' engagement through Hans. To be honest, this marriage is an arranged marriage in which mutual interests are met. The Lawrence family has recently waged several wars due to strife with neighboring estates, and their financial situation has become very poor. So, to solve the financial problem, they proposed an arranged marriage to the Dmitri family. The good news is that the young master actively supported this marriage. The young girl of the Lawrence family had a good reputation as a beautiful woman in the vicinity, so the young master saw her and fell in love at first sight. It looked like a painting. The two houses, Lawrence and Dmitri. Lawrence needed money, and Dmitri needed the background to establish himself as a particular aristocratic family. It was a mutually beneficial transaction. The only problem was that Lawrence wanted the second son of the Dmitri family, but protagonist actively expressed his intention to marry, and the two set to be married. And today was the day the two would meet for the first time. Protagonist had only seen Lawrence's daughter from afar at an aristocratic party, so the two never met and talked in person. Marriage, huh? In fact, it was something that protagonist did not even want to do. He allowed himself to go with the flow because of the reality he had faced. However, he was already willing to overthrow this marriage. Marriage is something that happens when both have feelings of love for each other. In the process of forming a lifelong relationship, conditional issues such as family background are not important. I'll have to look for an opportunity and find a way to break this marriage. The esteemed daughter's beauty and her background. Neither of them mattered to protagonist. Surprisingly, the problem was quickly resolved. That afternoon, as scheduled, Viscount Lawrence's daughter visited Dmitri. My name is Flora Lawrence. As rumored, she was a beautiful woman. The blonde hair that had grown down to her waist was luxurious enough to arouse admiration from the viewers, and nothing was lacking in her features. A typical beauty. In particular, the clear and calm eyes, like a lake, made me feel like I was being sucked in as soon as I saw them. He seemed to understand why protagonist wanted to marry her. She was already a woman of considerable value with just her appearance alone. About a month ago, Lawrence and Dmitri both talked about getting married. Flora's father, Viscount Lawrence, sat Flora in front of him and said with a troubled look on his face, "My wise daughter, I don't think it's necessary for me to explain how bad the land situation is right now to you. We need strength now. It could be financial power, and it would be even better if it were military forces. What is certain now is that in order to receive a force sufficient to solve our difficulties, the Lawrence family's treasure, you, must be presented for the arranged marriage. I am so sorry. Because of this ugly father, you have to endure such a choice." On that day, Flora's world collapsed. Although most noble daughters are sold in arranged marriages, Flora still had her own values. Forging her lifelong bond with the person she truly loves. She believed that even if the person was not a prince on a white horse, conditional problems could be overcome if there was love between them. But to think it would be Dmitri. This was out of the blue. 20 years ago, the Dmitri family was an ordinary commoner's family. I was not expecting a prince on a white horse but to have to make a lifelong bond with Dmitri, who is infested with workers in the mines. It is said that the conditional issue is not very important, but that is acceptable when I actually love the other person. No matter how hard I think about it, I don't love Dmitri. I don't want to dedicate my dream of marriage, which I always had, to Dmitri's minor like this. The problem wasn't just that. At first, she tried to marry Dmitri's second son, who had a promising future, but at some point, the subject of marriage changed to Dmitri's eldest son. I've heard rumors about him. What a lousy person he is. Even my father knows that Roman Dmitri is called Dmitri's fool. I really hate it. It was terrible. Dmitri's fool. This person has the rumor that he is confined to the territory of the outskirts and immersed in enjoyment without even dreaming of entering the capital until his mid-20s because he lacks talent in both martial arts and cunningness. At a noble party which was held a while ago, I had heard that he wasn't even good-looking. In my mind, there wasn't even the slightest bit of intention of marrying Roman Dmitri or loving him. So, I was worried. Flora had been living a good life as a wise daughter, but this was an area she could never compromise on. This cannot be real. The land situation? Of course, I know it well. But even so, I don't want to be sold to Dmitri's fool. She wasn't as wise and devoted daughter as her father thought she might have been, and she decided to leave the situation to the heavens after breaking her engagement. Although the purpose of the visit to Dmitri is to meet and spend time with the target of the marriage, which was arranged in advance without her permission, her actual purpose is to inform him of breaking the engagement. That's how she met Roman Dmitri. And she was sure. As the rumors say, he's unattractive. His height seemed to be around 170 centimeters. The impression from his dark hair was sharp and manly, but his charisma eroded as his skin was not in great condition. Above all else, there was a strong scent of perfume coming from Roman. Nobles originally liked to use perfume, but right now, Roman had clearly used too much of it. Flora was unaware of the fact that it was Roman's consideration to get rid of the smell of blood. She thought that Roman, who was immersed in pleasure as rumored, had been buried with the scent of a woman. The more she saw him, the more certain she became. Flora said firmly, "I wish that our marriage doesn't happen." Right, he will probably object. As a person who actively argued for an arranged marriage for her beauty, it would take considerable effort to convince him otherwise. Flora clenched her little fist. No matter how Roman Dmitri reacted, she would give her all to persuade him to end this marriage. However, yes, let's do that. Roman's answer was completely unexpected. At the unexpected answer, Flora's eyes widened. Are you really fine with breaking up the marriage? Flora's voice trembled slightly. She tried to manage her expression somehow, but her overall awkward expression showed a sign of embarrassment. I am a human too, so I am well aware of what others are saying about this marriage. You are called Lawrence's flower, the beauty that every man wants, but I, who is called Dimitri's fool, am too lacking to embrace you. So, I thought about it a lot. I pondered every night whether this marriage was the right thing to do, but in fact, our families had already made the decision, so there was no way for me to stop the marriage with just my own opinion. However, that's not the case now. Now that I know what you think, I must go forward with my decision as well. Roman was glad. In fact, from the moment he heard the word breakup, Roman thought that things were going according to his intentions. Flora Lawrence. She was, as rumored, a beautiful woman. However, for Roman, the criterion for judging a woman is not limited just to her appearance. When he was living as Baek Joong-Hyuk, the number of women who would dedicate their whole bodies and mind to him was large enough to cover the Great Sea, the Murim world's apex, and his handsome appearance. Along with that, because of Baek Joong-Hyuk's humane attitude towards people, women tried to win over Baek Joong-Hyuk by any means and methods. Of course, there were also conspiracies from hostile forces in the process. Baek Joong-Hyuk, who had to think a lot when meeting people, naturally put the value of their appearance in the background. She's beautiful, of course. However, that is all. Roman is now in the midst of designing a new life, and he has no intention of carrying the burden known as Flora Lawrence. Flora asked, "Are you really serious? Why would I lie? However, isn't this marriage happening because you wished for it? Originally, I was in a situation where I was getting married to the second son of the Dmitri family, and I heard that you strongly wanted to marry me, so the situation ended up like this. And now you're telling me that you're going to accept the divorce without any conditions? It just doesn't make any sense to me." Pfft. Roman laughed. She was truly a strange woman. In the spirit of persuading him by any means, she asked for the breakup, and when he readily accepted it, she became rather curious. "So, do you want to marry me? That's not it. Then let's not do something that makes each other tired for nothing. I respect your opinion and plan to break up the marriage because we both agreed. Also, I will take full responsibility for the breaking of the engagement. I'm called Dimitri's fool anyway. Even if I get another title as a man who broke his engagement, there won't be any big problems, but it's surely different for the flower of Lawrence, who has a bright future, isn't it? If you were to be the reason for the breaking of the engagement, rumors would be everywhere. I think this should be a satisfactory answer." Honestly, there was no consideration for Flora. A man who broke his engagement. That title will be a good excuse to cut off the troublesome conversation that I might get into in the future. It was entirely for his own sake, but Flora had to take it differently as she didn't know the truth. What the hell is this man? Flora's eyes fluttered wildly. She was embarrassed. According to rumors, Roman's insides are as ugly as his looks, but the more you look at Roman's words and deeds, the more I realize it doesn't match Dimitri's nickname of a fool. One's own clear subjectivity and the ability to act on it. A person who meets at least these conditions cannot be small enough to be called an idiot wherever he goes. Her mind was intricately intertwined. However, the water has already been spilled, and the breakup has already become a reality. The more important the task, the better it is to be dealt with quickly. So, drink some tea and wait. I will go speak to my father about this matter. She couldn't hold Roman back any longer. Seeing Roman walking away so casually, Flora looked at his back with a confused look for a while. Slam. What do you mean? Breaking off the engagement? The reaction was as Roman had expected. The moment he mentioned the word of breaking off the engagement, Baron Romero, the lord of Dmitri, could not hide his exploding anger. It is just as I said. I don't want to do this marriage. Since I have already finished talking to Lawrence's esteemed daughter, I don't think we can reverse this decision. This. Baron Romero's face flushed red. This was a notice. Rather than asking for permission to make a choice, Roman had already made a decision and informed him about it unilaterally. What a stupid bastard. Even if people called you Dmitri's fool, I tried to pass on a good environment to you as a father's duty. You are different from my other children. They enjoyed wealth and honor as children of the aristocracy from the moment they were born, but you and I experienced the days of commoners together. So, I still accepted you even if you acted like a fool. Since your environment had changed suddenly, you must have wanted to do things you dreamed of ever since you were a child. His beard was trembling. It was just as Baron Romero had said. Baron Romero had an only son, Roman, when he got the opportunity to supply weapons to Cairo. A child who was a commoner became the son of a nobleman. Roman's childhood went like this. As the children who looked down on him scratched his head, Roman's personality worsened. And now, Roman had become Dmitri's embarrassment. It symbolizes that Dmitri was a commoner, and that's why he doesn't want to show it to others. The union with the House of Lawrence is a very important matter for Dmitri to fully establish himself as a nobleman. Did I expect a big role from you? All you have to do is marry the pretty noble young girl you so desperately wanted, and you can't even do that. I'm sorry. This is not a matter of apologies. Smack. Baron Romero threw an object he could get his hands on at Roman. A strong shock hit Roman's head, but Roman calmly bowed his head despite the blood dripping from his head. This is a matter of responsibility. He broke his promise, so it is right to accept the price for it. If all goes well, I was trying to somehow solve the problem of you performing your national defense duties. But now, things have become messed up, so you have to leave for the battlefield within the next 6 months. Do you have anything to say about this? I do not. And I heard that there was an incident with Bloodfang. Witnesses say you punished them, but I don't believe it. Well, that doesn't make sense anyway. How can a guy, who can't even wield a sword properly, punish them? I am sure someone helped you. The problem is that Bloodfang is a beehive that even I cannot touch. Son, the moment you fail to fulfill your duties as a child, you are obliged to solve your own problems. So, you have to solve this problem yourself. I am not going to give you any help on that. It was not a rational decision. Baron Romero was furious and uttered every word that could punish Roman. Military duty and Bloodfang. They were problems that an ordinary Roman could not handle by himself. Of course, Baron Romero expected that Roman, as usual, would get down on his knees and weep for his forgiveness. If the news of the breaking of the marriage is not known externally, there is still a chance for the resolution of this issue. It was his judgment. He thought of breaking Roman's spirit completely and doing things as intended. However, I understand, father. I will take care of it myself. What? It happened because of me. As father said, I think it is right for me to deal with it. Baron Romero was perplexed. An unexpected development. Roman lowered his head, stood up, and spoke one last time. Then I will solve all the problems and come back. Roman left. Baron Romero was so stunned that he couldn't even catch Roman. Roman came back outside. He wiped the blood dripping from his forehead with his sleeve, and right in front of him was a person staring at him bewilderedly. It was Flora Lawrence. She heard all the conversations from outside the room and unwittingly told him her inner feelings. Are you really crazy? I don't know. Anyway, I'll be fine. Roman's reaction was blunt. Even as Flora looked up at him, he only wiped the blood flowing from his head with his sleeve. The wound on his head was not severe. Baron Romero had no intention of inflicting any serious harm, and blood was only dripping from the areas where his skin had torn off. Do you know what you've just done? It's Bloodfang, the Bloodfang. It's a group known to be atrocious in the vicinity. How are you going to solve it without the help of your family? Bloodfang. Their notoriety wasn't limited to Dmitri. There were many incidents in Lawrence, especially the terrorist attack on the nobles, which raised their notoriety. The reason Bloodfang is scary is that it has nothing to lose. They never invade the nobility's realm unless they touch their rice bowls, but if they think the nobility has harmed them, they will not spare their lives and retaliate unconditionally. They're not normal. They even put magic bombs on their bodies and commit suicide attacks. Do you really think you can handle them? It's okay to just tell the truth, so go straight to Lord Baron Dmitri and get down on your knees and ask him for mercy. Why do I have to do that? What do you mean, why? There are plenty of reasons. You're a funny person. Roman sighed and laughed. Roman did not waver while looking at the eyes that seemed to melt the hearts of many men at once. I know what you mean. However, when proposing to break up the marriage, you didn't think about my circumstances at all, but when I said that I would take on all the responsibility and solve the problem myself, then you're worried. Well, that's not right, is it? From the moment you mentioned breakup when you first met me, you had no right to worry about my circumstances. That is the relationship between you and me. Flora. After meeting her, Roman showed respect as her fiancé. He got rid of the smell of blood from his body, sprayed a lot of perfume on his body that was bad enough to distort his expression, and wore a robe that seemed to choke his breath. It was the least he could do to show his courtesy to her. Roman was thinking about breaking up with Flora, but he still didn't want to ruin things by hurting a woman who didn't harm him. However, Flora didn't feel the same way as him. The first day she saw me, the first words she said to me were, "Let's break off our engagement." Looking at the cold expression on her face, Roman knew he didn't need her consideration. So, he easily accepted the breaking of their engagement. He said he would take full responsibility because he didn't want to be associated with Flora anymore. Flora was perplexed. This was something she had never experienced in her life. Ordinary men take her words positively, but Roman was extremely temperamental. Flora was at a loss for words. Looking down at her, Roman said coldly, "We are strangers now. So, I will take care of my own business." He drew a line. Even though it is a flower that many men admire, its value varies from person to person. Roman looked at Flora as if she was nothing and just left his place, leaving Flora behind. All the commotion finally cleared up. Alone in the office, Baron Romero drank until the sun went down. "You are drinking too much. Rihanna Dmitri." Roman's mother and Baron Romero's wife checked her surroundings and sighed softly. The place was a mess. Objects thrown by Baron Romero were scattered on the ground, and the table was full of empty wine bottles. The smell of alcohol emanating from the bottle was enough to make her face frown. Baron Romero, whose face grew red from drunkenness, looked at Rihanna with a painful expression on his face. "Rihanna, I used violence against Roman today. I know better than anyone how wrong that is, but when I got myself together, I saw blood running down Roman's head. Aren't I a horrible father? Using violence just because my son is not growing up the way I want him to." He shook his head in pain. Baron Romero is not of noble origin. Born as a commoner, he had a difficult childhood, being beaten to death by his father, a blacksmith, every day. Wasn't it like that? The moment Baron Romero obtained the title of nobility, he vowed not to pass on that experience to his children. In fact, the three sons lived without knowing any difficulties. The problem was that blind love was also not the right way, and Roman, who had experienced the days of commoners together, was mistaken. A sore finger. That was Roman. Baron Romero, who had never used violence even if Roman was wrong, could not stand it this time. Rihanna walked up to Baron Romero, hugged him, and patted his head. "I don't think violence is the right thing to do," she said. "But when a child strays onto the wrong path, only the parent can correct it. So don't fall for the guilt. The Romero Dmitri I know is a strong man, and he's not the kind of person to sit by and watch his son go astray. I am not as great as you think." Considering that Roman said he wanted to break off the engagement immediately after Lawrence's daughter's visit, he must have received a message of breaking off the engagement from Flora. And yet, I vented my wrath on Roman. Despite knowing that there was nothing he could do about it, he chose a kind way, not blaming Lawrence. "I know your heart. However, there is still a chance to set things right." Rihanna. He knew what she was talking about. From the days when Baron Romero was a commoner, Rihanna always offered him a smart way. "Are you talking about Bloodfang?" "Yes. Roman is a proud child. So, that child must have said that he was going to deal with Bloodfang alone. But if you leave it like this, you never know what will happen. So, you must protect Roman." "Yes, you are right." Baron Romero nodded his head. "Bloodfang. I didn't think Roman could handle a group that was reputed to be atrocious. Since I didn't know what would happen if he picked a beehive for nothing, I needed a countermeasure for Roman's safety." Rihanna said, "Why don't you call the Knights Commander, Jonathan? Even Roman will not be able to handle the task alone, so he will surely try to convince the Knights Commander. Then, Captain Jonathan will just pretend he can't win and deal with Roman's wishes." "You are right. Jonathan is the leader of the Dmitri Knights and a powerful person who uses the 3-star Aura 1. If it's him, we can trust him." Baron Romero called his servant. "Call the Knights Commander, Jonathan, right now." "Understood, my lord." However, there was one thing they had overlooked. Roman Dmitri. The fact that he wasn't the same son whom they knew before. He risked his life for the words he spit, and that was the new Roman they would soon come to know. A few days later, Roman left the inner city. As Hans accompanied him without any security, he followed Roman's steps, but he could not hide his worries. "Young master, going out like this is really dangerous. The Bloodfang gang is a heinous group that has also waged terrorism against nobles. They must have been thinking of retaliating against the young master for the last incident, but what would happen if you walked the streets openly and without security? Please head back to the inner city." It was as Hans said. In the past few days, Roman researched about the Bloodfangs and learned that they were a famous dangerous group. Roman said, as you said, Bloodfang is a dangerous group. It's an organization whose stronghold and size of forces are unknown. People cannot help but fear them because they do not know when and where they will attempt terrorism. Nevertheless, that's it. At what point do you think this Bloodfang group gained this level of power? I don't know. It started by accident. The Bloodfangs once waged wars with the usury powers that opposed them and gained notoriety by brutally killing them. That was the start. Notoriety bred fear, and they realized how efficiently they could use it to get things done. It was a strange thought. Hans looked at Roman with an expression like he did not understand English. Still, it's dangerous, isn't it? It is. Roman sighed and laughed. That's right. Bloodfang is seriously dangerous. Notoriety swelled up, and in order to protect that notoriety, they had to do something worthy of the notoriety. Even in Murim, those with nothing to lose need to be careful, but the problem was that the current Roman was the heavenly demon. Heavenly demon. The apex of his cult. What happened for something from dirty muddy water to reach the top spot? Suicide bombings? That was a typical day. There were dozens of assassins attacking him every day, and the poisonous eyes that promised to curse him to death were so many that he couldn't even remember them. Baek Joong-Hyuk is a person who overcame such adversity and rose to the apex of the cult. If the opponent looked directly into his eyes, he would gouge their eyes out, and if they cursed him, he would cut off their tongue. That man is now Roman. Bloodfang's notoriety did not bring any fear to Roman. Let's go over there first. Huh? Roman stopped walking. Seeing Roman suddenly entering the restaurant, Hans followed Roman while panicking. The food came out quickly. The variety of foods that filled the table had a fragrant smell, but Roman spoke to Hans in a calm voice. I'll go out for a while. You should eat and wait here. What do you mean? Hans, who was drooling, was surprised. What do you mean go out by yourself? Doesn't that mean you want to become prey for Bloodfang? From now on, I have to deal with it myself. You don't have to be in danger. It can never be. Even if I am in danger, I cannot send you alone. Hans was adamant. At any moment, Hans was ready to run out with Roman, with a steak knife in hand. Roman let out a laugh. Hans. He was truly a good person. Leaving aside the barriers of being a master and a servant, at least he was genuinely concerned for Roman's well-being. Roman said, "You are my person. Am I right?" "Of course, I am the young master's person." "Then do what you can for me. I do not wish for meaningless sacrifices. Doing what you cannot do is not for me, but for your own greed. So all you have to do is sit here and enjoy the food as I commanded you. Just coming out here with me was enough for you to fulfill your role." Roman. Living a new life, he built a fence. And, for the first time, a man named Hans was put inside it. His identity doesn't matter to him. Roman accepted Hans as his man, and from now, his life will never be taken lightly. I will be back soon. Finally, Roman got up from his seat. Hans was left alone. He repeated Roman's words with a shocked expression on his face. "You are my person. Young Master Roman." I've never heard anything like this while serving him. Seeing him sincerely accepting him, who was only a poor man, Hans was moved without realizing it. I have to let them know about this. We can't allow young Master Roman to die like this. I don't know what he's thinking, but if he goes out alone, there's a good chance something will happen. Hans sprinted out of his back seat. Dmitri Knights. Now was the time to tell them that Dmitri's young master was in danger. When even Hans left the place, the food that had lost its owner grew cold. The outer castle. This is a place where ordinary citizens live. Unlike outside the castle, it was not a slum but had well-made streets, restaurants, and a plaza where people could rest. In particular, the statue of Hephaestos, located in the center of the square, was a symbol of Dmitri. It's noisy. The surroundings were noisy. A large crowd was coming and going, and it was crowded with people selling things and others trying to buy stuff from them. Roman walked down the street. Of course, there were many people who recognized Roman. Most of the people of the Dmitri family live in the inner castle, but Roman often goes out of the inner castle for entertainment and other things. While outside, it wasn't just once or twice that Roman made a scene. People whispered at Roman's appearance, but they did not walk up to him and talk to him. What? Courtesy to the Lord's family? It isn't something that involves Roman. Dimitri's people respected Baron Romero but didn't respect his fool of a son the same. Since I, Roman Dmitri, the target of revenge, am roaming the streets without a single guard, the Bloodfang should soon get to know where I am. It was the actual reason I came here. Roman had deliberately wandered the streets with Hans. It was the appearance he had deliberately shown before, but when he judged that his location had been exposed to a certain extent, he left Hans at the restaurant to be safe. Hans had done enough for his role. Hans' absence was used to make them careless and also because I had no intention of putting him in danger. If the Blood Fang is a group that attacks even nobles as the rumors say, now is the perfect opportunity for them to get revenge. Roman's outing today was no accident. After Roman was assigned by his father to take care of Blood Fang's affairs, he stayed in his room alone to get to know them well. In reality, their power was not that strong. The Dmitri Knights were enough to deal with them, but the problem was that it was impossible to eradicate the whole Blood Fang at once. So, people didn't usually touch Blood Fang. This was because if you touched them but did not deal with them properly, you would have to live with the fear of being the target of revenge for the rest of your life. An intangible force. Therefore, Roman made a plan. If you can't find them first, you just have to make them come to you. The fish is fresh today. Southern silk for only 1 gold. Move quickly, Max. It was crowded with people. Roman walked between them, slowly calming his emotions. Today is the day the Dmitri Knights will conduct regular training. Since the number of guards has been significantly reduced compared to other times, even if something happens in the outer castle, they will not be able to respond quickly. As the Blood Fang, you wouldn't want to miss a day like this. It's not a common opportunity to see Dmitri's young master, who just goes out on a whim, wandering the streets without a guard on a day when the Dmitri Knights are training. That's correct. It's a bait. Roman had presented himself as an attractive bait. He used this method quite frequently in Murim as well. Even the great assassins, who showed no traces, naturally turned on their eyes and rushed in when they saw loopholes. 3 in the back. Slowly, he gained a tail. The people who watched from afar at first were now openly pursuing him. Now, I'm tempted. Naturally. Roman turned and walked into a quiet alley. It's the direction of the entertainment district that Roman loved very much, so there was no suspicion in the eye of the pursuers. He gently waved the bait. Let them take the bait. Roman hid his true feelings and disappeared deep into the alley with a cold expression. Captain of the Knights, Jonathan. Jonathan, who had been instructing the Knights for a long time, frowned at the sight of Hans running towards him. What's going on? The young master is Speak slowly. Hans could not speak properly as he was gasping for air. Rushing here from the outer castle made his face pale, but it was more important for Hans to warn others of the danger to Roman's life. Young Master Roman is in danger. The young master is? Yes. The young master went out to the outer castle without a single guard, and it seemed like he was trying to fight with the Blood Fang. We never know what will happen if we leave him like this. We must find the young master as soon as possible. Hans's voice was very intense. It was a voice that actively appealed to how dangerous Roman's situation was, but Jonathan responded as if he was confused and had heard something absurd. I think my ears aren't working properly. Now, are you saying that young Master Roman, who can't even use a sword, let alone aura, went out alone to the outer castle to fight Blood Fang? That's right. That sounds really absurd. Jonathan grinned. He has been a knight of Dmitri since Baron Romero received the Dmitri estate and has experience teaching Roman and other young masters of Dmitri. The other young masters showed excellent qualities as swordsmen. In fact, they made rapid progress and advanced to the capital, but young Master Roman was an exception. He was weak, even among the weakest candidates. Above all else, his cowardly heart was a big problem. He sat on the floor and shivered if he saw a bit of blood, so Jonathan decided that Roman had no talent as a swordsman. His head is stupid, and he doesn't know how to use his body. The evaluation of being a fool initially originated from the Knights Templar. To say that Roman went out to fight Blood Fang, it was natural for Jonathan not to believe it. There is no time for this. We must save the young master. Hans ran wild on the road. Jonathan didn't like it, but he couldn't ignore Hans' words. There was also a special order from the Lord. A few days ago, Baron Romero summoned Jonathan and ordered him to help Roman. Although the Knights of Dmitri and Jonathan did not like Roman very much, they could not refuse the orders of the Lord they followed. If what Hans said is true, the stupid fool caused a seriously huge problem this time. Why the heck is a guy who doesn't even know how to use a sword doing something like this? Jonathan cried out. Right now, all knights, go and get armed. The knights were sorted in a row. Jonathan looked down at Hans with a fierce expression on his face. Guide me to where the young master is. In our land, it is unacceptable to dare to touch Dmitri's young master. The sound of footsteps echoed through the alley. The men who quietly followed Roman's footsteps revealed their true colors as they entered the isolated space. This is the Blood Fang's revenge. It happened in an instant. A man rushed at him instantly and stabbed Roman with all his might with the dagger in his hands. A surprise attack suddenly occurred without warning. Ordinary people would have been helpless in this situation, but Roman's reaction was quick. Swish. Roman dodged to the side by a hair's breadth. Then, he grabbed his opponent's arm with his armpit and snapped it. The man screamed. When he dropped the dagger in his hand due to the pain in his bizarrely broken arm, Roman caught the falling dagger and stabbed the man in his neck several times. Instantly, blood gushed out like a fountain. With a pale face, the man hurriedly tried to stop the blood from spurting from his neck, but there was nothing he could do about the blood seeping between his fingers. Shit! This son of a bitch! The men's expressions changed. They pulled out their weapons and attacked Roman at the same time. Swish! Weapons were swung from all sides, aiming for Roman's life. The sharp blades shone brilliantly in the sunlight, but they did not achieve their purpose and only ripped through the air. The men's faces suddenly hardened. If it was the Roman they knew, it didn't make sense for him to make such moves and dodge the attacks without much effort. Smack! Cook! Roman's kick explosively hit the man's stomach. The man tried to counterattack with a distorted expression of pain, but Roman escaped the attack range with a quick movement. Sensing his opponent's location quickly, Roman's fist pierced his face. His head spun around. Blood dripped from his mouth, and his teeth splattered on the floor like corn. Soon. Quack! Another man's scream was heard. While the man who had been beaten could not come to his senses, the dagger that Roman threw stuck into his thigh. The men were lying on the ground. In an instant, 3 people were defeated. The 2 men, who were still alive, were startled by the sight of their dead companion with a hole in his throat. How can this be? Is this really Roman? The intel was incorrect. No, their general knowledge was wrong. As far as they knew, he was never the kind of person who could produce an outcome like this. Is it just you guys? Roman's voice was dull. Roman wiped the blood off his face as if nothing had happened, and he looked around to understand the situation. There are no other enemies. At least, Roman's senses were saying that. There is no one capable of avoiding my senses in Bloodfang. In the next few days, Roman made a leap in physical development in just a short period of time. It was impossible for ordinary Murim members, but nothing was impossible for the heavenly demon who stood at the top of Murim. The heavenly demon arts. Murim's best breathing technique developed Roman's body quickly just by breathing. Only the heavenly demon and the heavenly demon arts could make such a miracle possible. It would take a considerable amount of time for Roman to reach a satisfactory level. Still, even if he recovered only 0.1% of his original strength, there would be no problem while dealing with Bloodfang. Roman was holding his breath. In his lower abdomen, some mana reacted. Roman's body, which was far from the ideal state, was already accumulating mana and entering a new state. If you kill us, you won't be safe either. We are the Bloodfang. The men were desperate. Since they were terrified, they tried to destroy Roman's will with words. You've already tried to assassinate and threaten me. Are you just stupid, or is that all you have to say? Roman squatted in front of them. Then, he cut their legs once more with a dagger. Slash. Kook. Only answer the questions asked from now on. If you answer me honestly, I'll give you a special chance to change your ways. What kind of, Smack. Just answer my questions. Roman looked into their eyes. The people, who were terrified, did not dare to look into Roman's eyes. How to take care of an organization. It's actually pretty simple. When you cannot know their true nature, you will figure out the leader at some point if you kill them one by one from the bottom. Roman laughed. Who is your superior? The conversation was short. The Bloodfang gang tried to keep the information secret, but they immediately gave out the information as soon as the torture began. He cut off the knuckles of the fingers. They could not hold out any longer when their eyes were being gouged out. There is a pub called Don's Do. We get our missions from there. If you say a special code, that's when they give you a mission, so we don't know more about it. Good. You should just have told me something like this first. Then, are you going to spare our lives? No, the only way to rehabilitate garbage is death. Stab. He pierced the man's heart with a dagger. There was no guilt. The heavenly demon cult was a place of survival of the fittest. Showing mercy to the enemy was not a virtue of the heavenly demon cult. Roman wiped the blood from his face with his sleeve and walked back into the bustling streets. One by one. Roman started laughing. He knew that he wasn't a good person. His heart was pounding. The feelings he could not feel when he reigned supreme in the world came alive after a long time and stimulated his senses. While the Dmitri knights went wild, Roman walked alone towards the lair of the Bloodfang. Don's Do. The town center was a place frequently visited by people. In that place, Bloodfang was proudly doing business with a sign in the streets. Ding ding. Welcome. As Roman opened the door and entered, the bell rang loudly. The scenery inside the building was no different from other pubs in the locality. People around the round table and the bar were chatting, and in front of them was a man who seemed to be the owner, busily carrying beer. There were dozens of people in the pub, probably because the business was doing well in its own way. Huh? Hey, it's young Master Roman. For a moment, people's eyes turned to Roman. There was no way they wouldn't recognize the young master of the Dmitri family, which rules the estate. Accordingly, the people who had been bad-mouthing him until now quieted down as if it was pre-planned. Roman Dmitri. No matter how much people call him an idiot, Roman was a powerful person whom commoners could not even make eye contact with. People quickly looked away. Roman calmly moved forward and sat down at the bar when the stillness subsided. Tears of Dawn, 27 years old. I'm sorry, but we don't have a drink called Tears of Dawn in our store. Can I recommend another drink? That's good too. Please make it as strong as possible. I have a lot of work to do in the morning, so I think I need to get a little drunk. The owner froze. His expression suddenly hardened. Tears of Dawn. A strong drink. Something you have to do in the morning. These lines, in succession, were the code set by Bloodfang. The problem was that the opponent was a familiar face, Roman Dmitri. People's eyes alternately looked at the owner and Roman in the quiet space. Some people showed pure curiosity, while others showed complex emotions in their eyes. A fleeting moment. A smile formed on Roman's lips, and the owner swung the dagger that he had hidden under the table like a thunderbolt. Attack! Roman hit the owner's head with a beer mug. At the same time, he threw his body backward, and several customers who had been drinking around until now attacked Roman. 2 daggers were nailed to the bar table. Under the dark lighting, the blood fangs revealed their fierce eyes. Roman had found the information accurate, and several men disguised as guests rushed to Roman at once. Ah! Run away! Customers screamed and ran out of the pub. Thanks to this, finding who needed to be killed was easier. 8 people. Roman fought with the opponents. The dagger wielded at close range threatened Roman's vital points, but Roman dodged all those attacks while staying close and with minimal movements. Not only that, he immediately counterattacked and punctured a hole in his opponent's neck. Roman knew that his opponent would fall to the floor, dripping blood, if he simply swung the dagger in his hand. This bastard! Kill him! The pub was not so peaceful anymore. The Bloodfang members revealed their true natures rather than acting like workers who soothe their tiredness with beer after a day's work. However, the opponent was a predator that would definitely devour them all. Even if they rushed from all directions simultaneously, the Bloodfang members were eventually defeated. He slammed the face of the last remaining man on the table. The rigid table shattered, leaving the man stunned, and Roman, without hesitation, kicked him in the face as he threw him to the floor. The man squirted blood and rolled around. Dropping to the floor, his body showed that his soul had already left him. Was that it? It ended in an instant. All the men who rushed to Roman died. Just one man was left. The owner, who was beaten by a beer mug at the beginning, looked up at Roman with a blood-stained face. Why are you doing this? What do you mean, why? You must clearly know why I visited this place and attacked you guys. You wouldn't have attacked me if you hadn't known that. Roman chuckled. The terrified owner suddenly fell back when he saw Roman sitting right in front of him on a chair. He recognized it. That was the expression of a ferocious demon. The owner cried out in an evil voice. We are the Bloodfang. Even if I die by your hands, my comrades will definitely avenge me by taking your blood. Nobility? Do you think something like that will protect you? Aristocrats are, after all, humans just like us. The reality is that even the body of an aristocrat will have a hole in it and can be found screaming like a pig when a sword is stabbed in. Do you seriously think that saying that will save you? Ha, kill me. Members of Bloodfang are not afraid of death. Roman's smile widened. The more his opponent struggled, the more confident Roman became that this was where he wanted him to be. Yeah, I wanted to meet a guy like you. A person who is not afraid of death, someone who will keep his mouth shut even if he is tortured and will somehow hide the information. A guy like that definitely knows valuable information. Roman stood up. Then he looked around and said in a very calm, subdued voice. Let's check out if you really are such a strong person who does not open their mouth to any threats. The will of the owner was strong. Unlike the guys who screamed and spewed out information like a child, even when he cut off his finger, he didn't open his mouth. However, Roman knew very well how to attack such a person. Is that a picture of your son? The owner's expression turned pale. In a single photo, which was placed in a drawer, he was happy with his son, who looked exactly like the pub owner. No, it's not. What do you mean, no? He looks just like you. You bastard. You aristocrat bastard, are you seriously resorting to threatening my family? The owner shook his body and screamed. I chose right. Roman walked back to the pub owner and waved the picture in front of him with a cold expression. While researching the blood fang, I found some very interesting information. The reason people fear blood fang is that they will surely retaliate, even at the cost of their life. However, all suicide terrorists have one thing in common. They are people who owed a great debt to the blood fang, but were not members of the blood fang from the beginning. Obviously, this means that people who weren't malicious enough to commit suicide attacks turned into demons at some point. Why did they change like that? What the hell happened to them that they changed so much as a person? The owner kept his mouth shut. It didn't matter. With that kind of reaction alone, Roman's decisions were correct. Blood fang commits all sorts of crimes to pay off debt. In the process, taking the debtor's family into slavery is a common occurrence. And that's the truth about blood fang. Blood fang isn't really a group of demonic humans that are willing to risk their lives, but people who have been put into a corner to get revenge by threatening their families as hostages. How is it? Isn't that a pretty plausible hypothesis? Still, nothing has changed. Blood fang will surely take revenge. Pfft. Roman laughed. What stupid people. From the moment he admitted Roman's hypothesis, the pub owner had no idea what trap he had fallen into. I promise in the name of Roman Dmitri. If you don't give me any information, I'll go back to the inner castle and give orders to the knights of my family. The 4 children in this photo, find them and kill them. And killing them quickly would not be good, right? So, I will order them to kill your children, who will surely beg to be killed off quickly, a slow and painful death. What did you just say? What? Do you think I can't do that? You are a noble. How could a noble? That's just prejudice. If our family is being held hostage and used, then we have no reason to leave your family alone. The world of survival of the fittest. In that world, defeat means death. Justice? Don't make me laugh. That doesn't mean anything. In reality, you have to do anything to win, and the fact is that Roman has no hesitation in doing such actions. Because he had shown all the respect he could to his fiancée, who was soon to part ways with him. Because he accepted Hans, who was only a servant, as his own person. The origins of Roman have not changed. Humans have various aspects, and Roman, who had lived as the heavenly demon, also had one aspect as the appearance of a demon. Roman said coldly, remember wisely. I'm not at all concerned about the well-being of the guys I classify as enemies. No matter how they die or what kind of pain they get, I am the type of person who can regard the lives of those who disturb my well-being as less than a fly. So, think very carefully. If the lives of your family are in danger anyway, will you bet on blood fang, who enslaved your family, or will you give accurate information to me so that I can take care of blood fang before they touch your family? Roman spun the dagger round and round. Then, he banged the dagger on the head of his son in the photo. Come on. Choose quickly. At that moment. The owner was sure. Roman Dmitri. He knew that he wasn't the person he knew before. The owner finally lowered his head, looking at his son's face torn so cruelly that his figure could not be recognized. After getting the required information, Roman started leaving. At the site that had become a mess, the Knights of Dmitri arrived with Hans in the lead. What the hell is this? Jonathan's expression hardened. He had heard the testimony of eyewitnesses. He found out that when Roman communicated with the owner and his guests attacked Roman by surprise. However, what was more shocking than that was the current scene in front of him. Men with strong physiques were lying on the floor with broken bones. Did young Master Roman deal with them all by himself? He couldn't believe it. Roman was a weakling with no talent for battle. He was an idiot who trembled when he saw the slightest of blood and couldn't even wield a sword properly. That was why he couldn't believe that Roman had dealt with so many men just by himself. There was a sense of disparity. He was different from the Roman he knew before from what the eyewitnesses told him. At that moment. Captain. Here are the survivors. The owner of the pub was alive. Knights Commander Jonathan. We must leave quickly. The young master is in danger. Right. Jonathan came to his senses. Roman. We cannot let Dmitri's eldest son die in another territory. Although he did not request for cooperation with Lawrence beforehand, he couldn't afford to wait for the approval of such a request at this time. The Dmitri Knights left in a hurry. Their destination was the city of Lawrence.
We will finish this chapter here. Next chapter will be out soon, so stay tuned.